rest is productive. Taking a break is productive. Saying no is productive because you do better work when you're rested.
I would say learn to take a punch. Separate your personal self from your work. Even a criticism of your work has nothing to do with you as a person. You gotta learn that. You gotta learn to be objective.
Where you look is where you go. So get really clear about where you want that project to go, how you want it to feel. Where do you want your career to go?
So this year in Vancouver, there was a brand new design festival, 35 events in just 10 days. It was very exciting. For our part, we produced a panel with 3 creative directors, Pamela Rounis, Margherita Porrà, and Greg Durrell. They discussed the craft of branding design, sustainability, and burnout. I'm really excited that we have this replay to share with you because I think you're going to get a lot of value. It was a sold-out event, chock full of takeaways. Without further ado, check it out.
Awesome.
Yeah, kick over glasses.
We're opening with karaoke, right? Is
Yes.
that what we're doing? All right.
Yeah,
Perfect.
you missed the mic check. It was really good. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to kick off with Pam. I'm going to hand over the clicker, and she's going to tell us a little bit of our process and background, and we'll get to know her a little bit.
Turning on the mic, is it good? Do I sit or do I stand? Just gonna chill. Just gonna sit. Okay, so yeah, it's me, Pamela Rounis. That's how you pronounce my last name, if you didn't know. So I'm just gonna tell you a few of my favorite things. Let's just start here. So I don't think I look 40. That's one of my favorite things. Is it the skincare? Is it the immaturity? Nobody knows. I'm just saying this to show my career trajectory, which I showed in a talk recently and people found it interesting. I started off by going to school at Emily Carr. I got my BFA in 2006. Worked in the gallery scene, then went back to school, was fortunate enough to be able to go to the IDEA program, and then started working in smaller agencies. And then I've been at Rethink for 10 years, and during that time, I was also co-publisher and designer for Sad Mag. And then I stopped doing that because I'm not crazy anymore. And then freelance, you know, as it suits me. So that's me in a nutshell. Any kind of packaging is also one of my favorite things. I love packaging. Probably my favorite design project. It's just so contained. It's just this perfect little snack of a project. This is some work from Dominion Cider, and from an earlier grouping of ciders I did for them. I mean, packaging, I love packaging because of the different textures. We did this canned wine where there's metallic in the shapes of the different wine glasses that you use for the different types of wine, and then matte in the rest of the can. I just love that. And then another thing about packaging that I love is all the little moments, the little surprise moments that you can add, the little surprise and delight, you know, when you open a package, when you look at it from a certain angle. This bare skin bar, which is like bath bombs, you can see I used the negative space of the letters to create the logo, which kind of acts like a pattern when used across the corner here. Love that. Another thing I love, color. Hello. If you know me, you know I love color. Worked on this project a couple years ago for Smart Sweets. I mean, what's more colorful than candy? No, it seems like not much, but this CGI still is from a 3-second shot that cost probably more than the rest of the entire commercial. But you gotta sweat the details. The candy had to look just right. Here's some more packaging. Again, my first love. For Collage, local arts and crafts company that are amazing. I was lucky enough to do their whole suite of packaging using collage, duh. This is from the Sad Mag's high school issue. It's a centerfold calendar made of rulers. Super fun. Again, the colors. I mean, I do love color, but I would say that My trick with color is to still use a limited color palette. I think that's the trick with making color look great. Here's another spread from an old sad mag. And I even try to sneak color in to corporate clients, you know, where they let me, if they let me. This is some work for Shaw, R.A.P. Shaw. And then I'm just going to leave you with some things that work that I know. That's probably why you're here. Want to learn things? These are 4 things that work that we use at Rethink. So how we start every project is fast and loose. So we have a saying at Rethink, your best idea is either your first or your 100th, and you don't know unless you do 100. But how do you do 100 ideas? Like, that's crazy. It's not crazy if you are sketching them and you're fast and loose. And we'll start a project like that, and then maybe we'll take, you know, some of the best sketches, and we might, you know, clean them up a little bit, like we did here for craft. This is maybe like a 10th of what we showed them. We were able to show them so many different ideas for their merch because we sketched them. And they did just choose the most boring one. And imagine how mad I would be if I had like spent so much time on the fun ones, you know? So that's where that gets you. Fast and loose, it is the way. Another one of my favorite design tips, what's in the way is the way. So many times we come up against difficult things, maybe it's budgetary restrictions or anything in the design, and usually leaning into it is the answer. When we were working with SADMAG, before we had operational funding, you know, it's expensive to make a magazine. And we're like trying to find ways to cut costs. And I decided, okay, well, if 4 inks cost this much, maybe I'll print 2 of the 4 signatures in 2 color. Whoops. Where did it go? I'm missing a slide. Well, anyway. Well, what I did was I printed them in 2 color, 2 of the 4 signatures, and what that did was it gave us this great look, first of all, for each of our issues. It was like a signature color scheme for each issue, and then I passed that limitation down to the illustrators for those issues, and they ended up creating very cool work, and that's probably coming from my like printmaking background why I wanted to do that, but it got me really good at briefing them, and I think they made some awesome stuff. Another tip I will say, this is really great. If you want to be distinctive, if you want your work to stand out, this is a really great formula. So to be familiar and novel, right in the middle, that's that sweet spot. And you have to be familiar so that people aren't freaked out, but you have to be novel so you catch their eye. An example of this is a project I did for A&W. They had some merch that was just very ugly and just sitting in boxes, and we said, well, what if we remix this? What if we cut it up? And we worked with Frankie Collective to do a streetwear collection using that. And it was just that perfect mix of, you know, everyone knows A&W, but that streetwear angle was that freshness, that novelty that caught everyone's attention. That also works for any kind of parody work. I've done a lot of that for SADMAG, for merch. Super fun. This is why Hollywood recycles IP, you know? It's a formula that works. And, you know, if all else fails, give them what they want, show them what they need. This is something we say at Rethink all the time. If a client is asking you to do something you know is not the answer, you know, you just show it. You show it, but then you also show what you want. There's nothing worse than knowing you didn't try, because then you're always like kicking yourself, like what if? They might not buy your idea, but at least you tried to sell it and you got it out there. So yeah, that's me, and we'll talk more later.
Beautiful. Round of applause for that. Awesome. We're going to go fast and furious over to Greg here. If you want to pass him the clicker.
All right, so from a kaleidoscope of colors, I'm going to go all black and white here. No, that's not true, actually. I have color in my slides, but my slides are short. And by the way, what you talked about, what's in the way is the way, I really resonate with that, and maybe we'll come back to that. So that's me. So my story begins in childhood dreams. Like, as far as I can remember, I've been fascinated with logos, and it started with sports teams. And I always wanted jerseys, but my parents would never buy them for me. So at the age of 6, I just started making them. And I might be from Toronto, but I've always had love for Vancouver. And somehow, I don't know how, in my life, 30 years later, I stayed on that same dream and journey. And in the 2010s, alongside Ben Hulse, we left a mark on the Canadian and international sports brand landscape and had the opportunity to work with some of the biggest athletes in the world, as we see Bolt and Osaka behind us. And of all the logos that are here, my favorite is the Canada Snowboard one, which is the lower left corner. It's an upside-down maple leaf that's the peak of the mountain in a black diamond. Like, are you kidding me? I just love that one. I still can't believe we did that one. And then somehow, meanwhile, during that time, I happened to become a filmmaker, and I directed Design Canada, a documentary film that looks at the symbols and logos that created Canada's national identity. And what literally started out of a backpack as a personal project turned into a global tour and crazy media blitz. I did a TED Talk on it. And what ended up happening was that through all these years and decades of chasing milestones, when I came up for air at the end of all this, I felt empty and nothing. I was terrified that I'd typecast myself as the Canadian Maple Leaf sports brand guy. There was one day someone stopped me on the street, like, "Hey, you're the flag guy," and like I don't want to be that guy. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with that guy. I'm sure he's a good guy, but I just didn't want to be known as that. So last year I restarted my life and started a new design studio called Tomorrow. And really our purpose and mission is to help ambitious organizations, entrepreneurs, and brands make a positive impact. So here are just a few projects that we've worked on recently. And I think that's my last slide. Yes, that's it. Over to you, Margherita.
I like that logo too. All right, clickers. I'm Margherita Porrà, and my agency, which I prefer to call a design practice or studio, is Arithmetic. And we are female-founded, just me, and I founded it 20 years ago. This November is my 20th anniversary. Oh, yeah. I really appreciate that, because when I started, there were 0 female founders of creative agencies, and there were very few female head honchos making decisions, hiring agencies too. So there was a lot of pretty insulting questions I got in the beginning, and it was pretty difficult in the beginning, and then plus I looked young, so it was complicated, but here I am. And we're the longest running. We've won 45 awards in the last 6 years. Yeah, feeling pretty good about it. So what we do is we build brands for humankind, and we do that through building emotional connection. And we're at the same time redefining what luxury means by bringing it back to where luxury actually started. Sustainability, slowness, craftsmanship, respect for the earth, respect for materialities, and not about consumption. My big thing, I preach about this to everybody, this doesn't just stay in the studio, this bleeds into every area of my life, is that the real mission in branding is emotional connection. And I would say the real mission in my life is probably emotional connection as well, too. The remarkable Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." I take that pretty seriously. I think like when you run a business and for 20 years, you can feel a lot of shitty feelings. And if you flip this and you actually think about this in terms of a brand, if you think about this, like people will never forget how a brand made them feel. Or sorry, people forget what a brand said, people forget what a brand did, but they'll never forget what a brand did to make them feel something, a company, a service, whatever it is they engaged with. They'll never forget if they had a shitty experience. So it's something that we put through all of it's kind of the thread that runs through our entire process, and it's from start to finish, and our entire process is talking about creating an emotional connection. So this is kind of like at a snapshot what our process looks like. It starts with beginner's mind. I'm not one for egos in the studio, and I'm not one for assuming you know a single thing. We always start with listening, asking a lot of questions, and even before that, we just try to build rapport and build a connection with every single person we're working with. So even in the like prospecting stage, I haven't even signed on a client. I'm just building a relationship at that point. And when you do that, you don't actually care if they sign up with you because you might have just got a new friend. And then we start from this, like it's a Japanese concept, sharpen, basically means like be a child. Act like you don't know anything. Ask the dumb questions. Be curious. Shut up, listen for a while. And then we do a lot of research. We're pretty heavy on research. We will research for so much longer than until we start designing. And that's where the nuggets come from. Like that's where the ideas actually come from. And then cultural anthropology, it's all about linking for us. So like what's happening over here in music, what's happening over here in fashion, what's happening over here in politics or whatever it is going on, what are the shifts and changes that are happening in culture, and asking, again, a ton of questions of what's happening with people. Then we go into strategy and design, strategy vision. We paint the picture, we get approval, and then we move into design. So design doesn't happen right away. We're definitely not your typical graphic design studio. This is a big question that we ask all throughout our process. What does it mean to live life as a human being in the world? I very, very consciously don't say consumer, I don't say demographic. I'm constantly talking about the human being, and I'm wanting to stand in their shoes. So that's a big one for me. It's like, how can I feel what they're feeling as early and as often as possible in the design process? Because if I can feel even like a tenth of what they're going through, then maybe I have a chance or an opportunity to affect change in their life, and maybe I could just make one thing easier, and maybe they'll feel a little bit better that day when they wake up, or like someone gets them. This is our studio. We've been on Granville Island for 17 years. This particular studio for 13 years. And we're really grateful to be working on the Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh nations. It's a beautiful place. The reason we're on Granville Island is because I'm obsessed with markets. When I travel the world, I just find out every single market I can find, whether it's a food market, a flea market. I drive everyone crazy because I will just keep finding them. It's that and like hot springs for me, or thermal baths. When you go into a market, you see real people who wake up at like 5 a.m., people who like really give a shit about what they're doing, people who really care about quality. They're standing there selling the thing that they harvested or that they made or they sourced or whatnot. And it's grit. It's the grit in their eyes that I really, really appreciate. So my studio's on Granville Island, but I recently moved to a plot of land about 5 hours north of here. It's deep, deep woods, dirt road kind of thing, potholes, and the only neighbors are like these free-range cows. So it's a pretty different experience than what I have right now. We moved in 2021. Kind of got dragged out. My husband kind of dragged me out, but there was one of those moments where I was like, I was supposed to be here all along. In 2021, something really interesting happened for me. I got dragged out because my husband wanted to spend a summer, which now we live there, to just play with the land. He wanted to like dig up the land and plant things and be a farmer. At the same time, I was going back and forth between Vancouver and where we live, and I was listening to Robin Kimmerer Wall's book, Braiding Sweetgrass, and one of the things she said really stood out to me. Which is half of the truths that the earth endows us with. Half of the truth is that the earth endows us with a great gift, and the other half of the truth is that the gift is not enough. The responsibility does not lie with nature alone. Half of the responsibility lies within us. At the same time, I was also working with Squalwyn, which is an indigenous skincare brand based out of Squamish. And the founder, Lee Joseph, is an ethnobotanist. And she took me through the Squamish estuary, and she walked me through every plant. And she pulled one wild rose petal off and told me to put it on my tongue, but told me to leave the rest of the petals for the pollinators. I felt that rose essence dissolve on my tongue. She pulled back Devil's Club for me and told me stories from her family. And we spent, I think, 6 hours in this estuary. I felt the breeze in my air. I smelled the water of the salt water coming in. And then I drove back to where we live, and fires were wrapping around everywhere. There was fires down the highway. I literally was driving by fires. There was fires within, I think it was like 50 kilometers where we live. My lungs were choked with smoke. The only place we could go was like down by the creek. I had a 3-year-old daughter at the time, and everything that I ever heard from David Suzuki when I was a little kid just came rushing back to me, and I was reinforced with everything that I had already been doing with my work, but with like a whole new energy. There's something about being a parent, having your home kind of in risk of fire, and learning about Indigenous culture all at the same time that just completely changed me. So that's why we moved up here. This is me literally walking my neighbor's sheep, because I guess you don't walk dogs. I'm the city girl gone wild here. That's just at the top of where we live, so we're up quite high, and this is me cold plunging on January 1st when it was like minus 40, because I'm crazy. Okay, so that was kind of this reminder moment in my life, but about 15 years ago, this is when I first started digging into removing plastic from packaging. So we got a bread client, and they wanted a window for their beautiful artisanal loaves, and I didn't want to do a window because I didn't want to do plastic. So we got into a bit of a fight about it. And then I had this moment, because what was in my way became the way. And 15 years ago, no one was talking about PLA biodegradable films, except for this one company that I had read a certain trade article on and couldn't find any information. Client didn't want to hire me to pay me for anything other than making some cute bags. So I just got on the phone, and I called and I called, and I made hundreds of phone calls, and I eventually got through and found the supplier that made the PLA that was biodegradable, and I found the printer that manufactured the machines in Asia, and I asked for his distribution list of who he sold them to, and then I introduced the two companies together to produce the bags for them. So that was 15 years ago, and here we are now, still not doing plastic, but for luxury brands, using fabric, using sustainably GOTS certified wool for inserts, FSC certified papers. Instead of, for ice cream cartons, we're not using plastic, we're using glass, that's food safe, tin for lids, that's highly recyclable. So then we do whole brand stories like interior design, furniture design, wallpaper, everything. So we're multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary. We do uniforms and pins and all sorts of things. This is a bagasse project that was using a waste stream. So that's my big kind of passion right now, is how can I use waste streams or how can I be reusable. So this is reusable, kind of reinforcing reusability, and this is how can I use waste streams. So from the sugar manufacturing process, there's bagasse, which is the waste, the husk, and you can mold it into packaging. All glass or PCR plastic if we have to use it for safety. I think I'm over, aren't I? No? I'm okay? I'm like speed talking now. Okay. I was like, I don't have any time. I can't see your full. Your cute little foot.
Oh, I was just trying to show off my shoes.
Yeah, I was like, nice kicks, bro. So I think I missed something here. Did I? Okay, no. All right. Anyway, so if we did a comb, this looks plastic. It's recycled plastic. Glass is highly recyclable. It's made out of sand. And then we tell a whole entire brand story. So this entire project was about how much can we remove from it? How much can I eliminate from every single step of the process, from our design process to the consumer and use? And so then the whole entire photo shoot was about stripping it all away and relating the human body to nature's forms, and doing a study of humans and doing a study of nature and drawing the connection. And the brand is called United and Free. So it's all about unity and connection and whatnot. Good Juju is a independent, female-founded, zero plastic waste, body care and laundry brand. Great founders, love them, and they came to us asking for like a tuck and fold box, and I was like, okay, I'll do probably that in some. Is this one? How do I?
One more time. Should be good.
So wait.
Can you see that? Whew. Okay, so this is corn. It's organic, certified corn, and it dissolves in your kitchen sink in about 3 seconds. So instead of doing a plastic insert or cardboard insert that wastes a tree and then it has to be recycled, we were using these inserts. They're not the easiest thing to cut a perfect circle out of, so that was fun, and they change a lot. They're very malleable, but it was a fun project. We really worked well when we dig deep and dive into research. This is Lumi, it's a vegan brand. I dug so deep into the research on this project that I ended up stopped eating meat, because when you're informed and you do all the reading on it, and the other thing too is like, how am I going to change hamburger eaters' minds? How am I going to do that? So I was like, I need to stand in their shoes. So that's that emotional connection. How can I get there so I can have a compelling conversation with the end user? But we also wanted to talk about how the future of food tech is going to be kind of wild and crazy and a little weird. So we created all these like kind of wild graphics, and we realized that we're not going to talk about the things that are upsetting or triggering for people, but we're going to talk about positivity. We're going to talk about like, how can things be better? So make change happen became the tagline, and we talked about the future and flexitarianisms, and so we did all the copywriting. We did the entire photo shoot, and so it's all about like food science and food tech, and it's kind of super weird and fun. So these are really fun photo shoots to style. I do all my prop shopping myself, so I spent a lot of money at Home Depot for this one. I love going to Home Depot for ideas, by the way. So I'm kind of the weird creative in Home Depot. Or dollar stores. But yeah, some fun photos. Is this the one that I'm doing, though? I can't remember. Okay. Last project I'm going to show. We also do publication design. This is a book that we designed for Bjarke Ingels, who's a pretty prominent architect. And the entire project is called Energy Hub. It's about sustainability, but also like the human experience in sustainability and the energy of the human and the energy of the building. It's based in San Jose, and they're redeveloping San Jose right now. And this was a huge project that we were kind of working on in terms of that. So all those projects, I could talk about each one for an hour, but anyways, there you go.
Awesome, round of applause. That was amazing. I thought that would be better than any introduction I could give of them. So thank you for giving us a flavor of what's going on in your guys' worlds, where you guys are coming from. Pam, I know that you grew up on Vancouver Island, right?
Correct.
Talking about where we're coming from, I think arriving in Vancouver as an outsider in general is hard. Like, it's a difficult city to crack. It's kind of notorious for that. Mm-hmm. And then even further, the creative scene here, like the agency and studios and stuff like that, are even harder to crack. They're a little more cliquey than your average Vancouver crowd. And so I'd love for you to share what helped you find your people, find your collaborators, find the other creatives that you like to work with, potential employers, potential clients as a freelancer, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. Paint us a picture.
Yeah, well, what happened to me was I went to Emily Carr, like I said, but I just was like a country bumpkin. I just stayed friends with the people that I went there with from back home. So I actually didn't even really make friends there. It wasn't until I started in the idea program that I felt finally like I found my people, my fellow designers. I never felt truly like a fine artist. So it just felt right. And I made lifelong friends in the IDEA program. And because the program's so great, they ended up in good agencies, and there became that network. But at the same time, I was online and I saw a friend posting a rock and roll choir, and I was like, this looks interesting. I mean, like, I like rock and roll. I like to sing. And I joined this rock and roll choir, the Kingsgate Chorus, and lo and behold, it's filled with amazing, creative, wonderful people. That's where I met Katie Stewart and a fellow co-publisher of Sad Mag at the time. And that's how I got involved with Sad Mag. So just really, you know, following your passions, getting out there, meeting people. Like this evening, these are all the people, you know? This is how you get out. This is how you meet people. And it is really in person, you know? I have met people online too, of course. I was recently on mat leave, and I saw another female CD on mat leave who I had never met in person, and we met up, you know? So it's also like just being brave, talking to people. But yeah, that's how I sort of have made my connections.
Yeah, that's awesome. How big a role do you think Sad Mag had? Because it was, for context, guys, she was CD,
Yep.
but also then produced a podcast for
Oh yeah, this
you know, there's like
yes.
all sorts of things, and really becoming quite central in like connecting the dots for creatives in this town. Like how important was that to things like getting the gig at Rethink in the beginning?
You know what? I think it was integral. Because okay, when I started at Sad Mag, sorry, I did a bad job at like telling you my story. If you don't know, after I graduated from IDEA, I went to a smaller agency, and you know, I wasn't doing like groovy work. I was like a junior. You know, we had small clients. It was like not fun work. And I get involved with Sad Mag because it's scratching that creative itch. You know, I had to do something. And, you know, that's the thing. Like, you can't wait for people to hand you these perfect projects. You just have to make them yourself. When I started working with Sad Mag, they had just a couple of publications under their belt, started by a photographer. They didn't really have a designer. And I was like, well, what can we change? And they're like, I don't know, whatever you want. It's completely volunteer, by the way, like not a paid situation, labor of love. And then we slowly just started changing things. Like, what if it's, you know, we're going to show only local creatives. We're only going to show film photography. You know, eventually we were making a custom typeface for every issue. Eventually each issue was themed. Then we had our like color scheme for each issue. So, you know, just trying to like create like a system, create like a community. We started funding the magazine by throwing parties because that's how we could do it. We'd throw these like tribute parties at the Cobalt like every month and then scrape together the funds. And then, yeah, you just meet all these people. And now I feel like I've talked to almost every like illustrator and photographer because of that. It was like invaluable. That wasn't like why I did it, to like meet people, but it was you know, it was what happened.
Yeah. I think I stole your slide. That's the slide you're looking for, right?
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Good.
But okay. Oh yeah, we did this is funny. Yeah, this map we did.
Yeah.
About the best place to make out in the city. I don't know if it's still true. This is from a while ago.
We'll have to update it. Awesome. Shifting gears a bit, I'd love to ask you, Greg. So you know, you mentioned the work with Design Canada. How many of you guys have actually seen the documentary? Yeah, okay. This is the room to ask. Not enough. More of you should watch it. So for the ones who didn't, he gave a little primer on what it was, but basically it was, correct me if I'm wrong, like an innovative group of Canadians were basically engineering what Canada's identity would be in the 60s and 70s because we were kind of floating in this weird middle ground as a country. Is that kind of roughly correct? Correct me.
Yes, and by the way, I didn't know he was going to put this up on screen, so he's taking me right back to that Canadian Maple Leaf flag guy. No, it's all good. I like to be
know.
this guy. Yeah, so I would say it was a whole bunch of factors that sort of came together. I actually just started out. I didn't even know I was making a film in 2012. For the people that don't know the story, I've just always been interested in the history of design, and particularly like modernism in the 60s and 70s. And as a Canadian, just growing up, surrounded by all these logos, I was just so curious who made them. Like, who made the CN logo? It's considered one of the best logos of all time, yet you couldn't find out any of this information. And I was tired of kind of hearing the British story, the Dutch story, or the American story. So one day I just thought, like, fuck it, how hard can it be to make a documentary film? I'm just going to whip that out in 1 year. Took me 6. But really what I thought was just making a film about logos ended up being these logos were a window into Canada's history. And I think the thesis of the film just kind of talks about coming out of World War II, Canada began to see itself as a nation, yet we still use all these like British ancestry flags and crests and coat of arms. And that's where there was a push to redesign the Canadian flag, which is, I stole this from Maclean's magazine and called it Fair Use Documentary. You can do that stuff. So that's where this image is from. But yeah, so it was just like a whole bunch of things coming together of a country kind of growing up. And then meanwhile, after World War II, for the people that know design history, a lot of those modernists that were in the time, they had to flee Europe because Hitler was recruiting designers. They didn't want to work there, and they moved over here. People from the Bauhaus came to North America, and Canada was a landing spot. And it just happened that a country was trying to find its identity while we had a wave of European immigrants that landed and led to, the modernization of the flag, CBC, Expo 67, the Montreal Olympics, and all those major historical events that happened.
Wicked. What I see that as is like an epic deep dive into like learning from the greats. You know what I mean? Like the historic greats. And one of the things that Creative Pulse events that I'm starting to get on a fairly consistent basis from people is like nervousness about the direction things are going in a lot of directions. But specifically what I'm talking about is as an industry, like the things that are happening in the creative space, the things that are happening with technology. And I wonder if there are any elements or lessons that you gained from making the documentary or even the practice of making the documentary that are giving you like faith and confidence or little tools for navigating the future.
Just take me back to a dark place. No, I'm just kidding. Trying to figure out how to make a film by yourself in a living room. It's wild times. Here's the thing. I think the biggest thing that I take from them is unbridled optimism. That era of work and the type of work that they did, they believed that design could make this world a better place, whether that was helping someone navigate through an airport or maybe creating a logo that makes a smile in your mind. It's kind of this unbridled optimism, But if you even think about these designers that when I met them in their 80s, think about the transformations they went through in their career. I mean, they would have started out with metal lead type. Like you want to print some like words on a piece of paper, you're literally choosing metal E's and F's and G's out of a drawer and assembling them into photo typesetting that happened in the 60s, into the computer, you know what I mean? So change is, and it's just part of human life, and now we're on this like AI thing, and people kind of freak out, but I'm sure people have seen the meme of we're safe as designers because it would require clients to know what they want for us to lose our jobs. Because I feel like we're tastemakers. That's kind of what we do. So yeah, I don't know. It's just another tool. It's all good to me, and you just learn to use it or you don't. But it's not, I think, going to make or break the industry. That's my hot take.
Yeah, optimism. I love it. Yeah, shifting the perspective. I was wondering how long it would take for AI to come up, and there it is. I kind of fed it to you. It's all good. That's awesome. Margherita, one of the things that really stood out in our conversations leading up to this event and just my research is like how prominent your philosophy is. This is pulled straight off your website. But, a lot of companies have philosophies. A lot of them have mission statements or whatever. Very few really like live by it. And that's not the sense I get in your case. I'd love for you to share kind of that journey in the last 20 years of like, starting out without presumably a really strong sense of philosophy and like how you found that and the impact it's had on your company and direction.
It's a good question. So after I just graduated design school, I went straight into fashion, and I went in-house. I was working at a company that was the #1 junior #1 selling junior girl streetwear line in Canada. It was like Roxy's rival for Canada. It was like me and 20 fashion designers, the only graphic designer, and it was like super analog. Like I was designing textiles, and then I was having to output the film, like doing separations and outputting the film, and like manually writing colors for like. It was also the 555 Soul era, so like every graphic had like 7 colors, had like rhinestones and nail heads and like other whack shit. And we were vertical at the time, which means we had a factory. So I'd like run downstairs and work with the screen printers with my crazy idea, and they'd be like, can't happen. I'm like, I'm staying here till we figure it out. And then I'd go over to the embroiderers and be like, embroider on top of this. And it was just like weird and crazy. Didn't really have a lot of values at all. Like it really was just like about making crazy cool things. And it really burnt me out. It was pretty rough. It was like the perfect first job. So I think once you added my hours together, I was like $3 an hour. And if I ever see an IKEA Kivik couch, I will like kick it because I slept on one so many times because I didn't drive home. And it was such a bad situation that it started affecting my health. And then I worked at Aritzia, and I had more bad situations and more bad experiences. And I just kind of was like, I need to start my own business. So anyways, started my business mostly just doing like graphics, like textile designs. I was like getting quite well known for textile designs, and I was having a lot of fun. I worked for like Forever 21 and Timberland and Diodora, like tons and tons of brands. And it kind of was like one of 3 textile designers in kind of Vancouver area. So I got a lot of the fun jobs. And then I got sick. So in 2008-ish, I was working with kind of a dick client, and not my client anymore, so I can say that. And it was a pretty crappy project. It was like a pretty comprehensive, big project, and she kept pushing the deadline and kind of putting a lot of pressure on me, kind of toxic positivity kind of thing. And I pulled a lot of all-nighters, which is kind of like my norm at this point. I pulled lots of all-nighters all the time in the front end of my career. And I woke up on a Saturday morning, and I couldn't feel my legs. After I'd done this like kind of boot camp, I couldn't run, and my legs were like quite like puffy and whatnot. So I dragged myself to a walk-in clinic. They're like 5 hours. I was like, I think this is worse. Somehow drove myself to VGH and found out that I had a 6.5 inch by 6.5 inch tumor in my abdomen. And it was so big that the CT scan didn't show anything. It didn't show any of my organs. It just showed my intestines pushed up underneath my heart. And it was a pretty tough period in my life. There's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of unknowns. And from there, that was removed. It was cancer, but it was removed. A year later, I had another tumor. And then a few years after that, my mom died of breast cancer within 6 months of being diagnosed. And then 6 months after that, I found 4 more tumors. So what was happening in my personal life had to start coming into my work because it was such a big theme for me. I didn't understand why I was getting these tumors, why I was getting sick, why they kept happening. It wasn't genetic. And I was like, if you knew me back then, you'd be like, a lot of my friends said that. So like, why is this happening? How is this happening? I would look at my friends and I would see my own mortality back in their eyes because they thought if this could happen to me for no reason, then it could happen to them. I was like the picture of health. I didn't drink, I didn't eat poorly, I ate really clean, I exercised, I didn't do anything wrong, So it was like, why is this happening? So I just started deep diving in my personal life of like macrobiotic and, all these, like how to get more nutrients in my body. Where are the nutrients going in our food? Like our food situation's becoming criminal. Where are the toxins coming in? Is it the hairspray? Is it synthetic fabrics? It was like, I went a little crazy. I'm not gonna lie. It got a little crazy for a while. And at that point, when I was like, well, if I'm eating all these organic food, but the food's coming in plastic, what are we doing here, right? So I was like, maybe I can make a difference, and maybe I can start like fighting with the little guys first and start asking them to stop using plastic. So every time a client came to me, not a single client came to me and said, I want to do plastic-free packaging 15 years ago. They came to me and they had a project, right? And then I would convert them. So I would say, okay, well, I'll do that for you, but I'm not going to be using plastic. And they'd be like, well, we need to use plastic because of these reasons. I'm like, I'll do the research. I won't charge you. And so I just did that over and over and over again. now I charge them. So did I answer your question? Yeah, yeah. So I think like you can't heal yourself without you can't talk about healing yourself without talking about healing the earth. Like we are one and we are connected. It is one and the same. So if you truly believe in feeling better, then you need to start talking about how the earth can heal itself as well too. It's a big macro micro conversation. So basically, my business is my soapbox, and I stand on it, and I preach to anybody who'll pay me.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to jump in there too?
Oh, well, I mean, I have just practical questions because you mentioned, at first you did not charge them for all the research, because when you're going through all your work, I was like, this is hard to find, because I tried to do this too. I was like, well, you can't use plastic, but I kept coming up against walls, and I'm like, I'm out of resources. I can't do this. At what point, how do you even build a project when it's something so new and you're like, I don't know if I can find a solution even to this? How do I build? Or how do you quote even, if that's gonna happen?
Yeah. Now we have a system and a model because we know how long it takes.
Yeah.
I think that in the beginning, so because of my fashion background, I got really good at sourcing really early. And so, and I have to credit that to working at Flowsport and working at Aritzia, because it was you come up with an idea and they'd be like, well, now we got to find it. We got to figure it out. Aritzia was great at being we can do anything. And that was a different mindset than I had. I'm raised by an Italian immigrant. You don't get everything you want. So I was like, oh, this is fun. And so I learned how to source really, really early on. And I'm also really good thrifter. I'm a hunter, in me. I know how to find things. Kind of like a dog looking for a bone when I get kind of get excited about something. And so I just try to be really efficient. That's one piece of it, is I try to be as quick and efficient as possible. That kind of happens when you're passionate about something.
Yeah.
So that's part of it. In the beginning there was one, that bread packaging took an entire month to find these companies, to kind of reverse engineer how we were going to do it. They didn't end up paying me for lots of things, so I definitely didn't make any money on that project.
Yeah, and I imagine even switching up the way things are manufactured, that's gonna up the cost per package for them too.
Yeah.
So you also have to convince them to spend more.
Yeah.
I guess you're good at selling, huh?
I think one of my skills, one of my skills is positive persuasion.
Yeah.
So I can create a very convincing argument. My husband hates me. I always win every argument. I think the thing is I always thought I was terrible at selling, but when you're really passionate about something, then you're really, really good at selling it.
It doesn't seem like BS.
And see, that's where I think it comes back to your question is I care a lot. I really, really give a shit about the earth. So that is how I become non-negotiable. I don't get bent. We've recently had to bend a little bit, and it hurts me, and I kind of just have to get over it a little bit, because security on lots of screw taps. We do a lot of high-end beauty brands, and bioplastics, so they're not plastic, they're made out of vegetables and such, are, when you put them into a lid, they're not effective. So efficacy is huge. You can't have products spilling when you're shipping or spoiling, etc. So now and if you do a portion, if you do a portion of PCR or a portion of bioplastic, it's still not effective. So a lot of the times the lids in our projects have to be virgin plastic. It kills me, it absolutely kills me, but it's what am I gonna do? Tell this founder who got 2 loans and saved up all their personal money, quit their job to do this dream project, that we have to do bioplastic, and then it leaks everywhere, and they have an entire run they have to repay, and mold fees and stuff. So
they haven't figured out yet. But
yes. Oh yeah.
Once they do, you'll know.
That's exactly it. We always tell our clients, I'm launch and iterate is a big thing we always say. Just get it out there, get the money, get the customers, and then we'll just keep our eye on this, keep tracking what's happening, and then we'll be the first to it. We'll get to it, And something is better than nothing. We always say to our clients too that to be human with your consumers. So humans, your consumers are humans. They have values, and they can't access all their values. Like they may hate plastic, but they live in a suburb and they have to buy all their vegetables at Costco and it all comes in plastic. But that doesn't mean they don't have values, right? So meet them where they are and say, look, like we did all the research and here we are. Like we just can't do this without some virgin plastic, but we're trying, come along for the journey. Meet us in a year. We're gonna keep you in the loop and like, you know, keep buying from us. We're female founded, blah, 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 and we'll get there together. So, yeah.
That's awesome.
But now we make money off of it, yeah. But now we have like a crazy Excel spreadsheet of like how many hours it takes to source, to manage everything. So like none of our clients come to like maybe 1% comes to us with a supplier. All of our projects were produced with suppliers that we found. So whether we found them in Europe or we found them in Asia or we found them in North America, but we find our suppliers and we vet them and we build relationships. And we try to invest in them so that they can keep doing things. And a lot of the time,
now you're going to be my resource. If I
oh
need to
yeah.
know.
Well, and not a lot of these suppliers actually do these things. Like we're also going to them and saying like, could you do this?
Yeah.
You know. So which is like for La Glace, for example, which was the ice cream company project that we did. We wanted. Like most ice cream cartons in the grocery store are like cardboard with a plastic lid. And I wanted it to be reusable. That was my big thing with that project. I was like, I want people to reuse these and keep it. And it was supposed to be like a bring it back program. It failed so miserably because no one returned them.
They're too nice.
They're like really pretty, you know? It's very transportive. It takes you to like Paris and makes you feel like you got a bougie little ice cream in your fridge. But apparently people love them for weed, airtight. Yeah, but anyways, that's a cosmetic supplier. So I know because we do like obsessed with skincare and whatnot that like skincare vessels are food safe. So I went to a cosmetic supplier and I said, most of their packaging is like this big, right? And so I said, well, would you make something bigger for me? Like how much would that mold charge be? And like, can you like give me all the certifications so when we import it to Canada that it'll be food safe? And they're like, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
One of the things I take away from
Can I just
jump.
one observation? I just love your story that you're working and you're getting sick and like, you know, life's not looking up for you and you're not like, hey, maybe I need to change my profession. You're just like, I gotta change my clients. I gotta change my clients, you know, and like reshape the studio. Like I love that.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I gotta give this up. It's like, no, I just need to work with different people.
Yeah, seriously.
My therapist version was, you really like to stand in the mud, don't you? Like, you don't like to get out of the weeds. I'm like, There's something about like a roadblock that I just like get lit up on. Like I just, if it feels like it's out of my reach, I want it more. Maybe, I don't know.
What I love about it, and you mentioned this in your intro too, is like these are lines that you drew that like if a client, it sounds like if a client says, listen, we just need the plastic, like it has to happen, they're at risk of losing you. And one of the things that, you know, I speak a ton of creatives, and most people kind of accept whatever is coming at them and don't really see the option of out. It's like, I can say no. And what you said earlier is like, the first conversation is just two friends getting to know each other. It's not about being desperate to close the business, and it carries forward into the actual project. So you're like, we're going to find a sustainable way to do this. And if you choose otherwise, it sounds like you're choosing another person. Like it takes such strength to actually implement in a business that has to make the numbers work at the end of the day, right? So I think that's probably what brings the philosophy into real life.
Yeah, I definitely have chosen people and values over profit from the beginning, and probably to a fault. You know, I probably could be way richer, and but yeah, I just don't have a choice. It's probably,
yeah, I love it. Okay, switching gears a little bit. Pam, you prepared a case study. One of the things you said in the beginning is that like, packaging is your, you know, first love in design. I'd love for you to show folks kind of an in-depth packaging project and show us. I mean, Rethink has a pretty well thought out model. What that looks like when you're actually executing a project. I'll give this to you.
Sure. Okay. We're like so different though, so this is like, okay, anyways, whatever. Here we go. There's plastic in this, sorry. Sorry. Okay, so this is the process at Rethink, the design process. We've honed this for quite a number of years. And before we get into this there is strategy involved. There's all the research. But once all that's done, we're starting at our idea exploration. And like I mentioned, it's fast and loose. We're going wide, not deep. We're doing lots of sketches. And then we're peer reviewing. Peer review is a huge thing at Rethink. We have Slack channels for peer review. We're talking to people, and we're iterating that way, which is really invaluable. I find my colleagues just a big source of inspiration. So yeah, we start with our wide idea search, and then we cull it down to a few ideas. And this is the first presentation to clients. So we call this shallow holes. Oftentimes, it is just sketches. And
Do clients get like an invite to Shallow Holes
They do.
presentation
They absolutely
one? Oh,
do.
I love it. What a name.
They absolutely do. And then once they'll choose like one or two directions from there, and then we go into the deep dive. After Shallow Holes, we go to the deep dive. And then after the deep dive, they'll choose, make some choices, and then the polish. So that is typically how it goes. Sometimes deep dive phase is a couple rounds. Sometimes it's several rounds. You know, you never know. But typically this is how it goes. So I'm going to take you through some work for Matchstick. Matchstick came to us, and they wanted to fill out their design system. They wanted to focus on community, which is huge for them. They did not want to change their monogram, which is fine, but they did need a lot of packaging. So we started again with our Shallow Holes presentation, lots of sketches, and we sketched, maybe each neighborhood has its own like emblem. Maybe we, have a tagline. Maybe, I don't know. It's very wide, just to kind of get a taste for them, like where are you thinking? Because oftentimes clients are like, they don't know what they want until they kind of see a little bit of everything. So we showed them these sketches. They're loose, right? Like they're not like pretty, but you get the idea, and you don't have to stress.
Can I jump in and ask a question
yes,
again?
Please.
So is this how you guys work? Like, do you actually work in sketch form, or do you walk it back and put it in sketch form for this Shallow Holes presentation?
Usually work in sketch form. Sometimes we walk it back. It depends,
Because there's an innocence to this, right? That you're not making a big commitment or anything. It's just like
for sure. Sometimes we do.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes we do, for sure. Or like there's kind of a hybrid. Even like that craft stuff I was showing you. Like, I drew one T-shirt and I just like copy and pasted it, and then you're like sketching on it. So it's kind of like, just keeping it loose for them, so no one's getting too precious. They're focusing on the idea, Yeah, but like these, they're clearly sketched. But you get the idea. It's like make the M out of different stuff. That's the idea. And just some preliminary sketches of, bags, using local artists. Maybe each bag is a different local artist. We showed them lots of different versions. And yeah, they chose to use illustration. That was one of the things they liked. And so the deep dive, we showed them 3 different ways in. So the first one, I'm just grabbing local artists and illustrators. At this point, I do not know if they could do it, or if we find someone that's sort of like this, or, whatever. It's proof of concept. So that's the system. This one used some photography as well, mixed in. A second area, really different. They're, kind of a verbose client. They had a lot of like philosophies and things they want to talk about. So we want to show, how does that work, across, maybe one of their menu boards is a quote or their philosophy or something. So showing something a little more serious. They didn't want to go that way though. They liked color. They liked fun. And this area we showed 2 different illustrations, and you can see how that really changes the vibe, these 2 different illustrators. And they really liked Maya Bokai. So these illustrations, I just pulled them from her site, and, change the colors to make them match, so you get an idea. And then, they wanted us to do our due diligence. Like, is this the best illustrator? I don't know. So we go wide. We go wide again, and we show And there's still more even. Just how does that look? What feels right to them? And we did end up just going back to Maya after all that, as you sometimes do. And then we worked with her on making illustrations that felt right for the community, showing the space and the people around it. And Maya, a wonderful illustrator, but we can't afford a million illustrations, so we did a certain number, and we made sure they were vector, and we used the shit out of them. There are so many parts or illustrations. We pulled them, I pulled them apart, I changed the colors, I used parts of them here, parts of them there. So we really maximized the use everywhere. In the deep dive, we started showing, kind of these flat schematics of what could bags be? Where's the illustration? Is it on the front? Is it on the side? Is it in the gusset? They have a lot of copy, so that was something. It has to be a system, There's many different copies, but it has to work in a system. So when they change it, it makes sense. So they had many other things, even more boring things, like just the packaging that the coffee packs come in, but you can have fun, and we did. We even tried to sell them on weird stuff like this, but they wouldn't go for it. But wouldn't that have been fun if they did? I just love packaging so much. This is where we ended up. It worked pretty well. We fit all the necessary copy on there. We got to show our community on the front and the back, and focus on all the places where the coffee comes from as well. There's a up-close shot. And the back. And then we really just blew it out. We made postcards with their philosophy. We did their pastry box. And I don't have a picture, but when you open it up, there's a little philosophy about making things slow and properly. The coffee cups. Coffee cups are fun. Packaging is fun. You're always up against a new challenge. Coffee cups, flat, are kind of almost like a rainbow shape. And then there's always what do you do at the seam? How do you make that work? And I don't have a picture of it, but that's where we run the logo up the side, or the word mark. Here's the shot of the interiors. So using those illustrations again in the menu boards. We even did little pins. These are the takeout containers. And then, we had some challenges with, the illustrations, how does it work in one color? How do we make this work on a plastic container? Sorry, Margherita.
Make it out of corn. That's how you make it
There's
work.
it's
Margherita's
corn, sure,
just dying over here.
I don't know. Maybe
killing
it's
her
corn.
turn.
I don't know. It could be.
It's biodegradable plastic.
Yeah, I don't know. We can put it in the recycling bin.
I feel awkward in between you two right now.
I know. So different. Well, this is a reusable cup, a camping mug. This is fun because there is no seam on a camping cup, so we did get to make it a fully circular illustration, which is fun. And of course, more merch. I love merch. When it's nice, when it's shit, it's bad for the environment. That's true. Some kids' sweatshirts. And of course, matchsticks.
Beautiful. Awesome. Thank you for showing that to us. As a creative director leading a team on projects like this, I imagine, let me put this another way. When you were working independently, finding a good idea is sometimes just what you personally love. You're just get kicks out of this. But as you lead teams through projects and big brands, you need to define what good looks like. Do you at Rethink have a good definition and guidance for your teams and yourselves to be this is what good looks like?
Yeah, we have a saying for most creative projects. We have an acronym we use, CRAFTS. So it stands for clear, relevant, achievable, fresh, true, and shareable. And it's a bit of a harder acronym, I think, to apply to design specifically, but it's still something worth checking your work against. We have a Slack channel called Is This Crafts, where we like evaluate other people's work usually, like stuff that comes up, you know, that's popular in pop culture. Like, how is this working? And then we give it a score. Like, what's the score for clarity? What's the score for achievability, freshness, shareability? And it's really interesting. It like helps you stop to think about all of those factors which are important. And design, I feel like clarity is paramount. And yeah, it depends on the project, which like a letter is going to be the most important. But yeah, crafts usually helps. And we do, like I said, we do a lot of peer review. We have a specific design Slack channel, Emily Blunt, we call it, where you give the blunt feedback, where you get to ask, you know, does this work? Does that work? And then as far as like working like with other designers and leading them, like I feel like the best projects are really led by a clear vision. If the team has a very clear vision and it makes sense, like I'm not gonna mess with it. I'm just gonna help it along. If they don't, then I will help them, give them a clear vision. And I think that's like the job of a creative director. I mean, I'm not here to impose, you know, what I like over anything. I mean, like I said, I think when a team's like into the work, it's better. I mean, that's just true.
Beautiful. One of the things you covered there was shallow holes, that cool way that Rethink shares concepts. I'm curious from the other two, how does that differ from how you share early concepts and go through with projects? Big question, but do you have a process that you follow every time, or is it, walk us through that?
I'm the total opposite. I'm all deep dive. I might promise shallow holes, and I might promise, oh yeah, we're just gonna see some sketches. But I love just like showing up with a 150-page deck and like just like a doctoral thesis. That's my style.
I'm sure they love it.
Sometimes not. But I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few moments. So Margherita, why don't you jump in?
Oh, we're cut from the same cloth. Yeah, I was like, maybe he should go first. It's kind of embarrassing. Yeah, I think some of our pitch decks, like right off the bat, are like about 80 pages. So yeah, we go straight to the finish line, because we spend so much time on the front end with like research, and we have like four meetings, 4 presentations before we even go to design. We've already framed in what the cultural forecast is, what the reference is, who we're speaking to, what the relationships are going to be like. We have taken the scope from like wide to quite narrow. So the solution is kind of like right here on a platter at that point. The research, that kind of cultural anthropology, it's just like it bubbles to the top, it bubbles to the surface. So then we just go kind of hear how this is how it's gonna look. Like we want to sell them. We want to not sell it to them. We want to win them over, and then start making it happen. And I think that at that point they're like eager for it. They're like dry-mouthed and like waiting for something. And you're like, come on, give it to me.
Finally, in an image. All this text slides.
Yeah, and they're all like
tantric design.
What's that?
Tantric design.
Yeah. Totally. Oh my God.
I love it.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think that's a really good lead up. You know, you're very research oriented. You've mentioned this a few times. Can you walk us through with the case study you prepared, how that shows up in the work?
Am I next? Yeah. Oh. If I want to play it, like loop it, I should have asked you that. Do you? Can I just do it again? Just go back and forth. Okay. Okay. Another book. We have designed.
Use the mic.
Produced, I would say, books.
Just
quite a few books.
Use your microphone.
Oh my gosh, yeah, thank you. It's like bedtime for me. Another book. This book is Castiglia. It's an architect in Italy, and I'll just let you kind of look at it for a minute. 367 pages. This was designed in 30 days with 3 people on the team, and the client gave me nothing. Absolutely nothing to work with. They gave me the architect's name, a portfolio from the 80s, and and one problem. They said, the kitchens are really, really small. So figure that one out. So if I go back. And then forward. That's like a song, right? Back, forward. You're the song girl. I don't know. No.
One more.
All right. Okay, so I think a lot of people talk about like inspiration, and what that means to them is going on Pinterest and like pinning a bunch of things, or like screenshotting the shit out of Instagram or other people's websites, and then like showing that to people. And I really, really, if I could get one message across tonight, it would be that research is more important than that. And I would call those screen captures, and I would call Pinterest references. So you can use references to clients to like prove a point, to be like, you know, this is, we want to do minimalist, or we want to do decadent, or we want to do Art Nouveau, or whatever it is, and you can like pull references from the industry. Great, and credit them too, right? So maybe they hire us next time. But what you want to do is research. And so this project, when I was given nothing from the client and a very looming deadline, I dug into research. And so do you want to be my like Vanna White and just keep looping?
I get to be the clicker.
Yeah,
I'm the
yeah,
looper?
Yeah.
I'm a clicker. I'm a looper now. All right. Let's go.
Yeah. Thank
wait.
you. So what we did is we found all the problems with the project. So we knew we had like a small kitchen that wasn't really desirable. I had an architect without very much of a portfolio. The architect didn't want to really talk to me, so I was like, fine, I'll create a book about Italian design. So I studied graphic design, and then after I studied graphic design, I actually went to SFU for a little stint and studied the Made in Italy equity. I'm of Italian heritage, and it was a really fascinating course that I had no idea what I was doing with. And then this project came up something like 15 years later, and I was like, okay, this entire project is gonna be about the Made in Italy equity. And so what we did is these are selling like high-end, like very, very, very expensive residences in a tower. But I didn't want it to be about that. I wanted it to be a coffee table book that people will keep for years and years. And so I just deep dived into B&B Italia and the history of Italian design and what was happening in that kind of cultural anthropology at the same time. So what was happening at B&B Italia, which is Busnelli and Associates, and then what was happening with women in Italy, and what was happening with manufacturing in Italy. And so, for example, up until B&B started in the kind of 60s, all furniture was like wood frame. And then in the 70s, Busnelli went to London and he visited a rubber duck factory. And he was like, this is crazy. It's like a one single piece of plastic. Yeah, my one time I talk about plastic in a good way. But he was mesmerized by this. So he went back to Italy and he was like, I want to do like foam injected furniture. And so now he created the iconic Le Bambola sofa, which is foam injected, and Gaetano Pesci made the up chair. And so I was like researching about this, and I was like, okay, this is all interesting, but why? What else was happening? What was going on? And Gaetano Pesci was fascinated with what was happening in the feminist movement in Italy. And so women didn't have the right to vote until the 70s, and so they did this like massive thing, like the burning of the bras. Gaetano Pesci's just like a true Italian design thinker, where he's like, why, and how can I use my furniture as like this metaphor and whatnot? So he designs this up chair, which is like the female womb, and there's a ball, but it's a chain. And do you guys know this chair? This chair? Okay, when it comes shrink wrapped, like it's like this big when it's shipped, and then you open it, and this chair just like inflates. It is a symbol of the uprising of the woman. So we have this thing happening with like manufacturing wood frame chairs to mold injected chairs, and then we have women burning their bras because they want the right to vote. And then we have B&B Italia, which is this like company that is essentially just bringing in creative minds to like play in this incredible warehouse with all these resources. So what I started doing was like linking what was happening in history, what was happening in furniture design, what was happening with Italian culture. So we did all the copywriting, I did all the research and everything. Not one thing was found from Pinterest or Instagram. When I hit roadblocks, I found Italian people, and I just I knew this one restaurant on Granville Island where the bartender was Italian and also very good looking. And I sat at that bar, and I just started asking him every single question I could find. And I was like, why are kitchens so small? I was like, tell me what kitchens in Italy. He had just moved over, and he was like, well, let's talk about you can't talk about the kitchen in Italy unless you talk about the ingredients of how Italian foods are made. And he's like, the top 5 Italian recipes are all made with the same 3 ingredients. And so it's not about excess. It's actually about minimalism, and it's actually about only necessity and what you need. And it's all about freshness, right? So you go down to the market, you buy the tomatoes, you buy the basil, you buy the fresh mozzarella, and you go home and you make 5 different recipes from it. And then that plays into why kitchens are actually smaller, because if you're buying fresh every day, you don't need a massive fridge and a massive pantry because you're stockpiling coconut milk from Costco, right? You're buying fresh ingredients. And at the same time, my dad was visiting, actually. My dad's a bridge engineer, and he's been living in the US for the last 25 years. And he came by and he was having dinner with me, and he's like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know how to solve this problem. And I'm like, all these small kitchens, and I need to make it glamorous. And he's like, have you heard of cucina semplice? And he's like, it's a thing in Italy. It's we don't want big kitchens. It's we don't need big kitchens. It's you want a big table to eat with all your friends and all your family, but we don't need a big kitchen. And so this problem that is a North American problem is actually not a problem in Italy. And so this client was like, I don't know how to sell these small kitchens, but because it was designed by this Italian architect, this small kitchen. But it wasn't even a problem. It was the reason for being, for freshness, for simplicity. So when you kind of dig and you scratch past that surface and you get into it, you start to uncover stories, and you can find all these different stories, but you link them together, and that's when you create a beautiful story. So this client had actually hired this hotshot copywriter from London, and he was supposed to work on this copywriting, and he couldn't get it. So I ended up doing all the copywriting on it, and it was that's one of my favorite projects because it was done in 30 days, and it has this incredible sense of Italy in it. And the cover is actually wrapped in Italian men's linen suiting. So, and it's debossed with a design from the architect's portfolio. And that that building sold out in 48 hours without a sales center. So that was a measurable ROI on that one. And it neighbored another offering that launched the exact same weekend that had a full sales center that didn't sell out for months.
Very, very cool. Awesome. I see you have some other slides there. Do you?
My job here is done as a looper.
Thank you, Looper.
I'm going to add that to my LinkedIn bio, Makes a mean loop with a clicker.
I briefly touched on this earlier. This is Squalene. This is the indigenous Canadian-owned skincare brand that I worked on with Lee Joseph, who's the ethnobotanist. They're located in Squamish. And this one is just an incredible example of put the computer away, put the Pinterest away, put Instagram away, and be quiet and listen and be very, very respectful, and just keep listening and take a lot of notes, and then do your research and ask a lot of questions. This is what their packaging and their brand looked like when they engaged us, and they had some pretty tall goals. They wanted to get into luxury boutiques, and then they couldn't get in with this packaging. So this is only a fraction of the SKU range. I think there's another 12 or more SKUs that we produced for them. And this entire project was deeply laced with respect. So it was really about how can I be a vessel for you? If Lee Joseph was a designer, what would she design? So I really, it was not about ego, and it was about stepping back, and it was about being kind of a tool, a platform, so that she could create this brand in her vision and in her likeness, and not in mine. And because I obviously have a white gaze, so I needed to kind of be ultra sensitive to that. This woman fundamentally changed how I look at nature. which is pretty emotional. Like, so, like, I don't look like, I always love nature, right? Like, I was like going hikes and like spending time in it. But after you spend time with Lee Joseph, you hear the wind differently. You smell the ocean air differently on like a deep resonance. You walk barefoot if you can on soil and in dirt. And so I think like it was just an incredible honor to work with an Indigenous human being and like scientist essentially, and to like learn from their wisdom. So
Beautiful. There's so much. Every one of these case studies, I feel like we could just do a whole night on. One of the challenges I imagine with that is building time, right? Like you have to incorporate enough time to do that depth of research. You did the book in 30 days. That sounds maybe like something most people wouldn't ask for, but like now that you've fully embraced this as part of your process and one of the differentiating parts of the studio and the practice, it's just similar to what Pam was asking, like scoping, right? Like how do you even account for that before you know how much of that research is going to be involved? You know, how easy it is or how difficult it is. Like what does that look like for you?
yeah, we have a crazy Excel spreadsheet at this point now. Like we've been time tracking, data tracking all of our projects for about 10 years. No, a little bit longer than that, 11, 12. And so we can see all the projects that were not profitable, and then we just like keep adding. You're like, okay, add more time to that. So it helps to do that because then you're not guessing. It's the kind of part that shifts is like every designer is different. So like we have to actually write historically who worked on that project and like where their strengths were as well too, as like kind of a point of reference for it. But yeah, data tracking, kind of diarizing each one of your projects really extensively allows you to be empirical with your planning instead of subjective, because time is this fascinating construct, right? Like I've talked to designers or contractors and be like, I'm spending so much time on this project. I'm like, really? How many hours have you spent on it? And they're like, I don't know. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I'm not sure how to have this conversation with you. Like actually track your time and do it by what every task you're doing, and don't make it a labor, and don't put any judgment around it. It's not a big deal. It's just like a diary. And I got that from my dad. Like he's worked on major projects his entire life. Like building a bridge is a pretty incredible responsibility, and he's always kept a journal. And he would tell me that he's like, you know, someone would call me up and ask me a question, and it would almost be like he would be incriminated a little bit, and he'd be like, oh, no problem. And he'd go back to his diary and be like, on this date I did this, and this, and this. So diarizing your efforts is just like a tool that you can use in the future. And so when we do our proposals, they actually go down to like 71 cents. And so when you have a quote that says like, I don't pick a number, like, 40,000 or 42,689, and then like 0.31. It's kind of hard to negotiate because they're like, you spent some time on this calculation, right? And so if you're very precise with things, I think that it helps in that regard. It's not always a perfect science. So sometimes we spend, because I'm not going to be like, okay, we dedicated 4 hours for like this inspiration workshop, and I have to go now. It's 4 hours. Like I will never do that. If the project needs 6 hours, or if I need to wander in a library or whatnot, then I usually you just figure it out, kind of thing. So, but sometimes you can kind of steal from other parts of the project too. So.
And Margherita, if I may, I think. If I may jump in, and what you're also not acknowledging is that a lot of the stuff in packaging and resourcing, you figured out on your own. Like you did that early on in your career, like I'm just gonna do this for you. Yeah. And now when you ask about how do you bill for it, like she's already figured it out. You know the process. Yeah, yeah. So it wasn't like the client was spending this endless money just spinning wheels. You put the time in the beginning, invested that time, didn't get paid for it, and now it's paying off.
Totally.
In sweet Excel sheets.
Well, yes and no, because every time you change materiality,
of course,
you're like a kindergarten kid all over again, right? And so like you become an expert in milk glass and like tin lids, and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well now I'm doing mycelium forms, and you're like, oh, I don't know anything about how mushrooms grow in a form and how long that takes, and the supplier doesn't even know what they're doing because they're so new. Or like we've been doing we do a ton of research, try to get ahead of it. So like, what's algae doing, and how we're going to use algae for like packaging, and it's like, okay, that's a long lead thing. I don't know when that's happening.
Have you ever thought of like vertical integration and trying to make a new substance?
I mean, when you live on a big plot of land, yes, it crosses your mind a lot. My husband is just like one with the land. Like he is very, very good with kind of agriculture and whatnot. So it sometimes crosses my mind, but at the same time, I'm like, I was like, I know too much.
Can of worms, yeah.
I know too much, yeah.
That's really cool. Greg, one of the things that I was thinking about in prepping for this is that I don't think people do any rebrands, big rebrands, at like comfortable times. Things aren't generally easy during a rebrand. They're usually a little bad, even, right?
Yeah,
And
no one's like, hey, life is awesome, let's do a rebrand. Like, that never happens, right?
yeah. I wonder if you could walk us through the case study you've prepped and just show us a little bit about like the challenges that came up or the complexity that you were dealing with, and we'll get into that.
For sure. And I want to try to link a couple thoughts in here in this next one. And back to this thing of, again, investing time into something that you're passionate about, I think is so key. I've never shied away from jobs that didn't pay me anything, like Design Canada, the film didn't pay me anything. It cost me money for 6 years. But then, 3 months after the film came out, I was contacted by Metrolinx, and they're the organization in Ontario that runs transit. And they came to us with a project about how do we unite 500 million yearly journeys. Okay, so I'm from Toronto, and when I went to high school, I took a bus, I took the streetcar, I took the subway. I am so intimately familiar with the public infrastructure in Ontario that this felt like a project I was put on the earth to do. And so they called and they're like, hey, we saw Design Canada. If you were to ever make another film in 20 years, we want a logo that would be in that film. And they're telling me about this project about uniting the network. And I'm like, oh yeah, like let's go. And then we get to the end of the talk, end of this first conversation. They're like, yeah, so we're just looking for brand guidelines. I'm like, what? You're just looking for brand guidelines? Like, yeah, we got the logo. Don't worry, it's already figured out. I'm like, oh. Okay. I'm like, okay, can I see it? They're like, sure, sign NDA, whatever. So they send it to me, and it just wasn't there, man. Like, it just wasn't there. I'm not gonna say who did it. I'm not gonna pull it up, but it wasn't there. And it was this project that was like a dream project, but I said no. I was like, hey, thanks guys. You know what? Like, I think this is awesome. I wish you all the best. I just don't think this is for us. And kind of walked away. And then I got a call the day the RP's due. It's like, what if the logo's back? Are you in? And I was like, I don't know. I wasn't even at work. I think I was in Stanley Park. I'm like, sure, but like my RP is gonna be some bullet notes in an email. Is that okay? They're like, yeah, send it by 4. I'm like, okay. And then we ended up winning it. So this is kind of what we inherited. So this was in 2018 they reached out. This started in 2019. So this is also 5 years older. These were all the transit operators that they owned. And if you live outside of Toronto, if you live in Vaughan, in York Region, anywhere, it's very possible you will interact with 4 or 5 of these brands just in one route home. None of the networks kind of work together. So their plan was to bring it all together. So how do you do that, and where to start? And it's funny because this one, every project's a little different, but I had this idea in the first 30 seconds of literally talking to the client. I'm like, I already kind of knew where I thought it would go. And so this is a huge deck that's just been distilled down into 11 slides, but it was just so simple for me, is that, so really what the brief was these key things. I can't really read this, so I gotta turn around and look with you guys here. So it had to immediately identify transit. We needed it to immediately clearly communicate. It had to be mode neutral. There's planes, trains, buses, no boats in Ontario, maybe eventually. It had to be brand neutral. Like, look at all those brands we just came from. Like, what do? You can't pick one. It had to be future-proof. So what happens if this network continues to grow? How does that work? It had to unite all these operators, like creating consensus. Dear God. And then lastly, it had to be international. Like, Toronto is an international city. How do we communicate to people that might not even know English that are visiting or had just moved to Canada? So again, back into the transit operators that we're working with at the time, and this list has grown since, but one immediate thing was there's this one sort of shared word, right? Transit, obviously. And what's really interesting about that word transit is that internationally it is so close, right? Like in so many different languages, it is really close. So there is like a precedent kind of starting to build. And during the research phase, came across this quote by Lance Wyman, who designed, he's a legendary designer, but he did the Washington Metro system. And he said, "Don't overlook the obvious. The obvious can be powerful because it is familiar." So back to a little bit about what you're talking about with, what was it? Novelty and familiarity? Yeah. So this was it, man. It was like an O. This is literally came to me in 30 seconds. An O, Ontario, with a T. And it's T and O. That's it. One single thickness. It says TO. It's transit. It's Ontario. You put it in black and white. See, I'm a black and white guy here. And then these sketches are literally 8, 9 years old. You put it on here. We had to show this. Like, hey, don't worry, transit operators. Your logos can stay for a little while. Just tuck them in little circles, Even at the time, they have this app called Trip Links. And it's like, perfect. Just make it a T. Put the T in the app icon. I don't even know what phone this is. This mock-up's so old now, but anyway, whatever. And really, this was an opportunity to like lean in. So where in corporate branding, sometimes it's like, oh man, we can't do that. Probably in a presentation. I had this happen a couple days ago. Someone's like, you can't present that. I'm gonna Google right now and find something else like that. But this was an instance of us leaning in. It's like, no, it's the right answer because everyone else is doing it. So this whole project was supposed to roll out with the LRT line in Toronto that's been delayed for like 4 years. People hate it. The public like literally hates this thing right now. But I got to see it in person for the first time 4 weeks ago, which is kind of cool. So all the stations are still being built. So anyway, it's also about to come out in this like highly controversial time. So we'll see what the public thinks. But we're really stoked about its potential of being mode neutral, speaking to the region, and just kind of built to last. And it's so inherently optimistic. Let me just rewind one thing from Toronto. The Toronto transit operator logo is like this one right here. Like, I just hate it so much. Is it like a fire truck or something? I don't know. How do you even know that that's a subway? It makes no friggin' sense. So anyway, so back to where I was right here. Check this out. And then very lastly, Erich Speakerman, another designer, actually did a blog post about this symbol. I think Metrolinx was like freaking out of like, oh my God, people like, we're just gonna give them a T in a circle. So anyway, I don't know how this came about, but I found this. So using the big T in a circle is an obvious and thus brilliant solution as a symbol for this one coordinated service. T for transit, T for together, T for Toronto. It has immediately authority, and visitors will presume that it's been there forever. The T is visible from far away and easy to reproduce in all sizes for media. I just had to twist the heck out of my neck out there. But anyway,
High praise. Wow,
so
wow.
yeah. So that's a quick little story of and like we only presented one option. Like this was it. Like to your point, there's a bigger research part component, but it's like how do you just drive it to like one single thing and then just defend it like a doctoral thesis.
That's awesome. That's such a perfect example.
Erich Speakerman. I mean,
I didn't do anything. Like I didn't.
amazing. Like he's like the god of typography. So that's incredible. Yeah.
Super cool. Something I'm thinking about. When I talk to designers, any creative really, like we care so much about the projects that something like the consensus building on this could like destroy some of us. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So as a professional, where do the boundaries start and end for you for building consensus when you've got this and now more people who are mostly like have opinions, right? So like where do you draw your professional lines on that?
Man, if you want my secrets, I'm gonna need another beer from over there. Holler. I'm just kidding.
Anybody
Do we
need
have
drinks?
any?
Yeah, go get it. Can we throw that
Send one
some
over. I'm just kidding.
beers
Yeah,
and
I'm
water?
half joking, but I would totally take one if it comes. Okay, so it's a great question, and I kind of distill how do you build consensus is what I take away with many stakeholders, different objectives, and conflict of interest at times too, right? So where do you kind of build? Oh yeah, here we go. So I kind of think it's these three Was that? Water. One water, too? Double fisting here? Is that what's going down? I could do it. It wouldn't be my first time. Okay, so really I think consensus building comes down to 3 key things. Number 1 is preparation. By the time I get in that room, I am so prepared. I have crossed every T, dotted every I. You know, we just finished working with a water treatment company. They have this like game-changing technology that can revolutionize wastewater. I spent 3 months with their engineers understanding the technology before I even presented anything. So when I walk into the room, I can articulate the business. I can help define a mission and vision statement. I know all about their competitors. You know, it's like back to references and mood boards. Like I don't look at fucking shit. Like I'll look at competitors and what's happening in their industry. I don't surf like cool Pinterest things, except for Design Canada logo archive. Shout out to Mark. He's in the audience. That's a great website. There he is over there. So number 1 is preparation. So knowing when I'm in the room, like I'm ready and I'm confident in what I'm going to present. Number 2 is like a journey of bringing people along. Like no one wants you to just drop a logo on the end and be like, boom, there it is. This is your logo. You got to bring them along and you got to tease things out of them and put them in the journey. Whether it's right or wrong, sometimes it's fun. Just like the sketch I was asking you, like, do you guys actually sketch or do you go to the end and then come back, right? So bringing people along.
I've done that.
You've done that? Yeah. And then the third most important thing out of all of it is you have to learn how to take a punch because you're going to get knocked in the face. Things might be going so well, but inevitably, this happened to me 2 days ago. I've been working on a project for 6 months. We started this project a year ago, and we're high stakes presentation right at the end, and finish the whole deck, present it. The first comment up is actually probably it was epic. Like this guy summarized my 1-hour presentation in 2 sentences. That if I ever wrote a memoir, this thing's going in there. I can't talk about it right now. But then question number 2, so the second one. So after the first one, I'm like, fuck, this is going to be easy. Like, I'm just going to sit back, have a beer, you know? But then the second question just went the opposite direction. And this guy has grabbed the mic and is on a tangent. And I'm just watching this go. And we probably all had those moments. It's like, fuck, I'm about to lose the room. Like, I'm about to lose the room here. And this guy's off on a tangent. I'm just going to abstract this. Let's say I'm presenting a logo. It's a yellow triangle, let's say, right? It's sunshine yellow, you know, it's bright, it's youthful. This guy gets up, it's like, I hate the yellow. You know what I mean? It's like something kind of trivial, like you can change color, but again, it has like game-changing consequences if you don't get this in line, right? So this guy's just going on the yellow. It can't be yellow. It's got to be mustard yellow to connect to, or whatever his opinion. It almost doesn't matter. So what do you do in that moment, right? You can fight it, you can stand there and fight him, but then it's like, oh man, that's not gonna de-escalate the situation. And this is comment number 2, how do I move on? And a little trick that I've learned in these situations is simply just repeat back to him what he just told you. That's it. It's like, hey, Dave from accounting, right? Like he couldn't even be an accountant. He doesn't know anything about color. Dave from accounting, it sounds like you have some concerns about our bright yellow. It sounds like you want to be more connected to Colonel Mustard's, whatever. I don't know. You know what I mean? But you just repeat that back to him and make him feel heard. And that might not shut him up. He actually just gave me another like minute, but maybe I saved that from being 5 minutes, if you know what I'm saying. So that's just like a little trick that I do sometimes in those moments of like, oh man, this is like getting away, of just repeat it back to him. Like one final thing on that, in Design Canada, I kept getting this bit of feedback that, hey, there's no women in your film. And it's like, man, I know, I'm making a film about 1960s like Canada design. And I kept getting this over and over. And then I thought, you know what? I'm just going to put the critic in my film. So I put the critic in the film right at the start, 6 minutes in Design Canada. It's like, we talk about like immigration, we talk about race, we talk about women in the workplace. And then no one ever said anything to me about it again, right? So anyway, that's a trick. Kindness, repeat back to them if you don't know what to do. And always think about the critics and work them into your presentation.
That thing also works on 3-year-olds.
I know, yeah.
100%.
It's actually an FBI negotiation.
Here's boss, right?
Did you read
There
that?
go.
Did you read that
Never
book?
split the
Dude,
difference.
oh my God, that book
Oh my
has
God,
changed.
I love that book. I love
Well,
that book.
see, that's where. So, whoa. See, now I'm like awkward in between you for other reasons. You guys are best friends.
Read
that
Well,
book.
you
If
got
you-
that 0.71 whatever invoicing from that, right?
Yes.
Because
Yes,
it
yes,
just
yes,
looks like, if you're
I knew I had heard
$10,000
that somewhere.
Yeah, that's the same. It's the same book.
I have read that book like 3 times.
I haven't
And then
seen
I
her in
listened to
15 years,
audiobook.
but it seems like we've been pretty connected. since
Never
then.
Split the Difference is the book.
It's
Very
amazing.
good.
Fantastic.
It's game
Written
changer.
by a
It's game changer.
FBI negotiator.
Yeah.
How to persuade anyone.
Very, very entertaining. It'll
Very
help
good.
you with clients. But also parenting books will help you with clients and employees. The second I had my now 7-year-old. Oh. I'm like, what's happening? My now 7-year-old, when she started speaking and negotiating with me, I just started deep diving in like child psychology, and all of a sudden I was like, I'm gonna use this on my clients and my employees and
My
husband. And everywhere I go, and it's kind of a game changer, yeah, because it's like, do it simply, actually. Like, it's quite simple, actually. Winning people over, you can get there.
And they feel heard, and they've voiced their opinions, and you know what? That opens the door that I can go back to Jim from accounting. Hey, man, like, really heard your feedback. Let me show you how we've addressed it. We tried to whatever. Maybe we arrive in the same place, but it kind of just de-escalates some of those big political
I
situations.
think why this is so important is because a lot of designers' egos kick in when their work that they've spent hours and hours and hours on, they really believe in, and they know it's the right decision. When that work and that effort and that passion gets questioned, that like lizard brain kicks into full gear, and your ego is just roaring, and you want to defend. Defending is the worst thing you could do in those moments. You need to be the inquirer, you need to be the observer, you need to go to that beginner's mind, and you need to like listen, repeat, ask questions, give them space. Do not argue with them. You know, I had that came up yesterday in a meeting, and we talked about it afterwards with the team, and the team was like, I kind of didn't know if I should have said this, and she's like, you were quiet. And I was like, yeah, I was quiet. Sometimes an awkward pause really works. I wanted her to have some time. I wanted the client to have some time to like think through, and also that we respect. Maybe she doesn't like it. It's not the end of the world, right? So you just never know. They don't like it today, and they might love it tomorrow. So just shh a little bit, you know?
And so we're from the same kind of vintage, 555 soul, going way back. That took me back. But I would say early, well, you know, I know. But what I was, like, earlier in my career, I would have fought. I would have fought to the death.
Yes.
Like, I would have, like, I still sometimes die for ideas. I'm always willing to die for a good idea. But now I'm, like, maybe a little more chilled out of, like, understanding there are multiple ways to do it. And back to that main point that we both gravitated to, when there is pushback in that room, I see that as an opportunity to lean in and figure out, like, what that is. Because if you can make that person a believer, then, like, you're on the road to success, you know.
But also, they might know something you don't know.
Exactly.
And so if you get defensive right away, you're missing out on an opportunity to like learn that one nugget that you could never have uncovered in your research because you didn't work at the company for 50 years. And so I always say to our clients right when we start at the beginning, I go, you know, I will do my absolute best to know everything about your industry and your business, but I will never assume that I know more than you. And so you're the expert, and I just like hope to learn from you. And that gives them space to just share with me and like confide in me and be comfortable with me. Because I think some clients are like, well, I've hired them and are paying all this money, so like I'll give them space and I'll let them do their thing, and I don't want to impose on them or like influence their decision. But they have knowledge that you can access if your ego can take a back seat.
I love it. What really stood out in that project was the willingness, again, to set ego aside and not be like, I'm going to impart my fingerprint on this project. It was like, okay, the answer is in what other people have done. And that kind of brings me to thinking about trends. I came across this kind of tweet the other day, and it's very true, right? Like, over time, all these big known brands gravitate towards pretty much the same look. And it got me thinking about, as leaders and designers, what's your perspective on trends? When do you know when you want to lean in?
be like, this is something that we should lean into to have a modern view of whatever this brand needs? And when are you like, this is a trend and therefore I'm not going to touch it with a 10-foot pole? Anybody?
Well, I think it just goes back to everything you've been saying, like all the research. I mean, your design decisions should be made on the research, not like what's trendy. Like potentially what's trendy could intersect with your research potentially, but most likely it's not going to do that. There is room for trend in design, but it's for, I think, things that are more transient, like magazine design, maybe fashion, maybe things that don't have like the staying power is like $1 million brand. Like you're gonna want something different for that. And I mean, I don't think there's something inherently wrong with a sans serif logo, and that's not your entire brand. Your logo isn't your entire brand. There's many distinct brand assets, other assets, parts of your brand. So I wouldn't immediately shit on doing this, but I do think we will be swinging back. I mean, like, yeah, cyclical, like going towards craft and not. So I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't do trends. I still have the same Photoshop skills since like 2001. I haven't really evolved, so I don't know. There's all these cool, tricky things. I just don't. I don't go there. I look at some of these and I'm like, yeah, this looks great. You know, does Google that becomes Alphabet ever become who they are now with this like weird squiggly original logo? Like, probably not. You know, it's like it's cool, whatever. But are they like $100 billion juggernaut, whatever they are now? I don't know. Yeah, Margherita, how do you feel about trends?
It's such a big subject, having like worked in fashion, and I think I've been tracking trends for like 20 years. That I absolutely agree that there's like a time and a place for it. So when you are working on seasonal campaigns, like maybe in like the social media efforts of a brand, you would want to like feel relevant, and that's kind of what like trends are saying. They're like, this is of the moment, everyone's doing it. I think like my big concern with trends is like how quickly it's happening right now. So that makes it extra risky for a brand to be using it in anything. And so you're like, when I started off, you build a brand and it would be like, you would tell your client this should last like 10, 15, maybe 20 years, if longer, if you're lucky, you know. And now you're seeing rebrands happening like every 3 years. And that's really scary for me. And it's just like, I remember back at like when I first started kind of getting into fashion, if you went to Europe and you bought shoes, you knew that those shoes wouldn't be like cool in North America for like another 3 years. So you had like 3 years to look like you're cooler than everybody else, and then you still had like another couple of years to wear these shoes. But now it's like something launches in Paris, it's like everybody already knows, and it's already all over North America. So the timing of things is just so rapid and so quick, and that directly connects to overconsumption and waste and a big, massive global climate issue. So trends freak me out a little bit. Like I kind of want to reject them in that regard. But I think like if you always get clear on your reason to be, like reason for being, your why and your values, then you go, well, is that trend relevant to like our why and our reason for being? And then you're like, no, it's just a trend. Okay, maybe it plays up in our photo shoot, you know, and that sort of thing. So, or maybe the models are wearing those outfits in the photo shoot, or whatever it is. Like I think there's like a way to have like that relevant flavor, but not outplay yourself so quickly. You need to look at like logos as vessels for meaning, right? Like you're putting meaning into this typeface by all these other actions you're doing. So are you going to be putting the meaning in your logo that you're just like into trends and you're just flipping them out? Like be really conscientious about all your decisions.
Love it. Margherita, one of the things you said at the top when you're doing your intro is that 45 awards in the last 6 years. I'd love to get your perspective on awards. I know I've met a lot of creatives that secretly or overtly really wish they could win awards for their work. It's a kind of a milestone moment in their careers. What is your perspective on awards, and how do you think this is impacting your business? You're obviously taking it seriously.
For me, I think awards are kind of like serving, I guess, like three functions. One is, when I started out, like I mentioned, there wasn't a lot of female designers. There wasn't there's a few female designers in our design history class in design school, but they're typically the wife of a famous designer. I had one female teacher in school, and she taught art history. So there wasn't female representation. I think like back in the day, Characters. You guys remember Characters, the agency? Maria Kennedy was this like creative director that wore like red stilettos, and I was like, oh my god, a woman. And it helped me to like see this female figure. And so for me, I'm almost like doing it for my daughter, if that makes sense. I'm like doing it for other designers coming up. It's like, or not doing it, but like I'm feeling the value of it, that it's going to carve out space. Because if you still look at it, there's still a huge imbalance. There's not a lot of females winning, female-owned agencies or female designers winning awards. So you go to these award shows and you're like, it's the wives that are there, and you're standing next to the men that win it. So for me, it's like super important that female designers get more representation. I was recently asked to be the juror for the Penta Awards, which is a global packaging award contest that's based out of London, and I'm the first Canadian female juror, and the awards show has been going on for decades. So these are the moments that like, okay, little Margherita who started her agency when she was like 23, you're like, I see you, you know, like here you are. So that one's like a big one. The other thing is for like, there was no sustainability categories when we won like the first like 40 awards. So our work winning that, like all those projects should have been in a sustainability category, and they weren't because it didn't exist. And the last two we won, like the Die Line Award was in sustainability and whatnot. And it's like we kind of pushed that category into being. And so if you can kind of keep just like getting attention for something you're doing that means something to you, then like changes start to happen, and then bigger companies. Like a lot of the awards we're winning are also being won by like LVMH and Pepsi and Coca-Cola, but for plastic projects, right? And so now they're seeing that these like small companies are doing better than them. I hope maybe I like come across on like the conversation in their mind of like, why aren't we doing it? If like a little tiny agency in Vancouver, Canada, where's Vancouver? You know, like is doing it, then maybe they can with their billions of dollars. So I don't know. Maybe that's my contribution, but yeah, it helps. It helps. I think it helps.
Yeah, awesome. Pam, you recently did a talk for Ladies Wine and Design on creatives facing burnout. I think the word has come up a handful of times, even just tonight. And I imagine that as a parent, like burnout sucks for everybody, but when you become a parent, it adds a different flavor because A, you're more susceptible to it, and B, the repercussions are bigger. And then also as a leader, right? You're leading teams and have to guide them through burnout. And what are some takeaways that you shared in that talk or have been thinking about since for creatives facing burnout?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. Like I think anyone who is ambitious is going to get burnt out at some point. And it's almost futile to tell that person, just say no more. Like, it's so hard to say no. You know, like when you like have a fire in you to like work and make the thing, like it's really hard to say no. But I found that reframing that as being productive helps. Like, rest is productive. Taking a break is productive. Saying no is productive because you do better work when you're rested. You're not going to get burnt out. You're going to come up with better ideas. I mean, there's a reason why it's like a cliche that you come up with an idea in the shower. It's because you're like chilled out and relaxed. So if you reframe the rest as productivity and a necessary part of your creative journey, then maybe you'll be able to say no and just feel okay about it. At least that's what's helped me. Plus, I just like literally cannot do more work because I have children now, and that's my forced break, which is actually wonderful.
Anything else to add from the other two?
Oh, this is like a whole other talk. You know, it made me think of the words by Deepak Chopra, who writes like, do less, accomplish more, do nothing, accomplish everything. And I thought that was like batshit crazy the first time I heard it. I was like, Like, no, I need to like, you should see my to-do list of all, like, we know how to break down a project and reverse engineer it and put it back together. And, but there's a point where your body will start calling the shots. And you could be like me and you don't listen. Like, I didn't take any time off after I had my ovarian tumors surgeries. I think I was told to have bed rest for 4 weeks. Like, you couldn't sit up because of the incision. It was like very big incision and cut through all the muscles and everything. I think I was working like 3 days later. Yep. So I didn't take time off when my mom passed away. I didn't take a lot of time. I haven't taken a lot of time off. I didn't take mat leave. So like I have moved to the forest and I have been sleeping 9 hours a night, and I have been like hitting the reset button because my body said no a long time ago and I didn't listen, and then I started getting insomnia and whatnot. So it's just not worth it. Like I'm kind of like the future, don't do it. Yeah, like it's just not, it's not good. And so what's interesting about Deepak Chopra's words of like do less, accomplish more is it's very like Buddhist thinking in terms of like if you can still the mind, if you can quiet the mind, then you can access some incredible ideas. And there's a great book on this, like Stealing Fire, about like how to kind of access all these kind of different waves of like divine brilliance, you know, and like some people take mushrooms, and some people like do crazy like hella skiing, and some people like free dive until they almost die, and some people go to like Burning Man, or you can meditate, or like there's like a whole like plethora of ways to like get that crazy amazing idea without working tons and tons of hours. So that's kind of the headspace I've been in the last 2 years. It's like how can I be more brilliant by doing less? And it's kind of been this like thesis that I've been trying to prove to myself by like reading book after book after book and like testing it out on my team and integrating it in projects, and it's working. It's like kind of amazing. I work less than I ever have, and our ideas are bigger and brighter and better, and the work is like I think we have like 11 projects right now between like a really small team, and everything's just like firing and going and getting quick approvals and like launching. So do less, accomplish more. It's not my words, it's Deepak Chopra. But
I want to answer and say I don't get creative burnout, but then I see my wife over there and I know she would have a different story. So I echo everything you guys are saying, you know, which is about finding the reset. Like for me, it's running. Like I solve most of my hardest creative challenges like running, not on a computer. So I think it's disconnecting. That's the one for me that connects. So I think doing the opposite and physically putting myself where I have to think about other things actually really gives me focus and clarity at the same time.
I think one of the interesting things about like our line of work and the type of clients most people in this room might interact with is like there's a lot of pressure, and you want to show up as like you got your shit together, you did the thing on time, and the team worked really well together. But there's a whole bunch of deadlines and things that happen that are literally just people picking a number out of the air, right? Like most of the projects, we're not like solving world hunger. This is a rebrand project or a design thing. It's like a small part of a bigger thing, and recognizing and giving yourself permission, either as an individual or as a leader, to point out that like, okay, we want to like meet our commitments, but also there are times where you can just be like, we can move this back, and there are very few repercussions and a lot of upside too, right? So I think that's something I'm personally trying to learn in my agency. What I'd like to do as we kind of transition out and into the social here is some rapid fire questions. All right, so I'm going to ask some questions, and you get to just drop 30 seconds. First thing that comes to mind to kick this off. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Pam, your favorite way to connect with new creative talent. The context for this is, I'm guessing about half the people in this room are here because they just want to meet you and work with you guys. You know what I mean? And so, what is the way for you to find creative talent in 2024?
I usually do leave myself open to like coffee chats or like portfolio reviews for anyone. It's not like all the time, but definitely at least once or twice a month, I will sit down with someone that wants to. So I'm pretty open, and I don't know, keep my eyes peeled out there. Come to events like this.
Beautiful. Greg?
Creative Pulse, obviously. Follow CPYVR. No, I don't know. I don't know. Just meeting people, man. Just life. I don't know. Life just happens. Like I don't seek anything. Thing kind of come, you know. Just life, connections, people. So.
Fair.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't follow websites. I don't follow trends. I don't follow social accounts. So it's a lot of collaborators that I've worked with for decades too. So
Think of
it's really
one in the
personal.
last year. Well, I'm breaking my 30-second rule. Think of one in the last year that you didn't work with before. How'd you find that person?
In the last year, I haven't worked with before. I don't know if I have one actually.
fine
We have
answer.
web developers, but that would just be from the quality of their work. I would say so. The quality of someone's work will attract me to it. Not like bombarding my inbox with like resumes or something like that.
Fair.
I find a lot of connections on Instagram. It's like whether it's people reaching out to us, or if I see somebody's work, and I don't like to have an agenda, but if I see someone's work that I like, I just like reach out and be honest with my grace, and I just like say I love your work or I love this or whatever, and build a connection and a relationship. Like for example, about a year and a half ago, this happened with a particular female artist. And I think we just had commonalities. She's a creative, she's a mother. We just like started kind of fanning on each other, and a couple of years have passed, and then a project came up, and I was like, I think you're perfect for it. Can I pitch you? And the client loves her, and actually went to school with her. Like there's all these incredible synchronicities. So I would have to say like that's probably one of my favorite things about Instagram is just like the ability to connect with creatives that I probably wouldn't otherwise meet, especially living remotely. We also get a lot of people emailing us, but it kind of, you forget about it. So it's like, I think almost Instagram's a bit easier because it's like visual for me, and like my inbox, like I get like a couple hundred a day, so it gets buried pretty quickly. So it's
so formulaic.
it's so
to jump on
it's transactional,
It
right?
is.
It's like
I don't feel anything. Like
Yeah.
again, I don't think I get as many as you do, but so often I don't even feel they're written for me. It's like, dude, you didn't spell my name right, or like you forgot an R or something.
everyone
you know
gets
what I
my
mean?
name wrong.
There's that, and
If
so
it's formulaic,
I don't know.
I'm not responding.
It is, you know what? And so when we started our careers, like it worked. Like you could email people and get responses.
100%,
now, right?
yeah.
And like I don't know what the new way forward is now to get attention, but it's definitely not emails with resumes.
Yeah,
Not shit emails anyway.
Yeah, shit emails. Yeah, that are like 3 paragraphs long. It's like, dude, I'm not.
Well,
I'm not
also
reading
like
this.
getting asked for things in the middle of a busy day, or like it just kind of sucks, to be honest. Like I get people emailing, "Hey, I like really want to learn from you," and I'm like, "I have nothing left. Like I just what? Like can you offer me cake or something? Like I just I don't like I'm not a teacher, and this it's not a charity right now. And who are you? And like
Yeah, that's something. I mean, I just wish people asked, could think of their requests or ask better questions when they're getting in touch, because that's like everything. It's like you ask the right question, and I'm 100% there for it.
Exactly.
But like
flatter me or something. I love compliments.
Frankly, you have to start every email in like with flattery, or else why would I respond?
all right. My next rapid fire. One design pet peeve you would love to see abolished.
I mean, this is client side, but I do not like multiple tiers of approvals. That is the worst.
I don't know, man. I love the job. I love the process. I don't give a shit about awards. I don't give a shit. Like, it's fun, the chase of getting the project. I just love the minutia. I love all the things that no one sees to make design great. That's what I lean into. So I don't know. I don't even want to say get rid of trends, because all the people that do trendy design give me an opportunity to do what we do. So I'm all good, man. Everyone just like keep following the passion. And I don't know, there's nothing I would necessarily abolish. But I hate working in web now because you got to do desktop, mobile, tablet.
Oh, too
That
many
shit sucks.
deliverables.
There's
There's
too
too-
many. Oh my
too many
God.
deliverables.
But I'm not changing that. So Margherita, maybe we got something more practical.
Biggest pet peeve is being in design is when people are just knocking each other off. Like, it just makes me super irritated. We were in south of France a year and a half ago, and just it was like the tail end of a trip. A work trip. We'd already done trade show research, and we went to a big gala, etc. And then we were just doing a couple of days of just like fun walking around Cannes, and all of a sudden we see like an exact replica of La Glace, our ice cream project. And so that it was the name La Glace, it was the logo, it was the same color palette, and I was like, what? like it's almost shocking. Like we're like blinking and being like, it can't be. Like, how is this happening?
Did you confront them?
I was kind of at like dealing with a lot of other things at the time, so we kind of pushed it to the client. We were like, "Are you gonna deal with that?" And then I kind of like romanticize like ruining them on social media and all this, but I'm just like too nice. Like I don't want to. But then I'm like, "But you were mean to me." Another time that happened was in Shanghai, and I'll never forget this day because like on the weather app, it had like skull and crossbones. It was like, don't go outside, it's like toxic air. School was canceled. It was low visibility, but we were there in Shanghai, so I was like, we're going outside and we're gonna like tourist. And we were walking through the French concession, and I couldn't even see my colleague in front of me. She was like 2 steps ahead of me. I couldn't even see her because of the visibility. So we had our kind of heads down, trying not to breathe this air. And I looked to the left, and I'm like, what's that photo shoot we did? What's it doing in there? And so we go into this like hole in the wall nail salon, and all these photos that we had done, art directed on for a photo shoot, were like blown up and huge on the wall, and the brochure was like all our photos. And I was like, can I talk to the manager here? And they like didn't speak any English, and I was like, I need to talk to the owner like now. And I was like starting to lose my mind. I'm like, the Italian in me can like boil the blood like pretty quickly. My husband calls me the Italian rattlesnake. You like, I'm calm, and then you don't see it coming, and I will like snap. And this was one of those like breaking points. And so I went to the neighbor where they spoke English, and I asked them if they knew the owner, and she's like, yeah, I know the phone number. So she picks up the phone, she calls her, and I'm talking to her, and I tell her like, you're using all our work. And she's like, girl, this is China. We just copy. And I was like, okay, good chat.
I lived in China, Shanghai, and she wasn't lying. That's
No. Yeah. I mean, and like literally down the block, we were like heading to this other shop because it was on my list. I was like, this looks like a really cool shop. I'm gonna go do some research. And on their website, they had another one of our clients, this like soup shop we've done work with, all those photos on the website, and set it as like a stock, like they were stocking it. I was like, and my colleague's like, well, maybe they are. I'm like, no, like they don't export out of Canada. It's like a Granville Island soup shop, right? And so everyone was just ripping off our work. So it's like, how about we just all be creative? Like we got into this to be creative, and like let's not copy each other, you know?
Except if it's a T logo, you can copy that.
True.
Yes.
All right, last rapid fire here, guys. One piece of advice. Your nephew is coming up in design. Says, how do I do this? What's the piece of advice, the nugget of wisdom for an ambitious designer?
I guess, I think I mentioned it earlier, just like don't wait for the perfect project to be handed to you. You got to create your own look. So, I mean, whether that's like doing a job for a cause you believe in potentially, or a friend, you know, trying to find any way, or just a personal passion project like Sad Bag, you know? Don't wait, just do it.
Love it.
Yeah, I would say learn to take a punch. So important, right? To your point, separate your personal self from your work. Even a criticism of your work has nothing to do with you as a person. You gotta learn that. You gotta learn to be objective, because that's only gonna make work better. And I think it's about falling in love with the process, because if, again, you just love the end or beginning of projects, you're not gonna get far. There's so many hours involved. It's blood, sweat, and tears. You gotta love the process. You gotta love the minutia. And if you don't, maybe it's not for you. But I think that applies to anything in life. Learn to love the process, and it will just become a gift.
100%.
It's the journey, not the destination.
100%.
When I was 18, I learned a pretty valuable lesson that I didn't realize would play into my design career, but it has. I decided to take motorcycle lessons, and so I signed up, and I didn't tell anybody. I just signed up, and then I came home, and my at the time boyfriend and brother were on the couch, and they were pissed. They were like, what? You can't like learn how to ride a motorcycle before me. And I was like, then sign up. And then, so the three of us, so like these three musketeers, signed up for this motorcycle lesson, and we're in a parking lot, very small parking lot with pylons and everything. And we're doing the like, you know, weaving through pylons. And I finished the weaving through the pylons, and I turn, and all of a sudden one of the instructors starts like yelling. I don't know what she was saying. She was like, you know, like blabbering to me. And so I'm looking at her, and I just ride right towards her, and then I crash the bike, right? And she looks at me and she goes, "Where you look is where you go." And I was like, oh, noted. And what was interesting about this is my very empathetic brother happened to notice me, and he was looking at me, and he fell. So here's the deal. It works in design and it works in your life. Where you look is where you go. So get really clear about where you want that project to go, how you want it to feel. Where do you want your career to go? How do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel? Where do you want your relationships to go? How do you want them to look? How do they want it to feel? I always talk about like when we don't know what a project's gonna look like and the client's like not feeling insecure, I go, if you could close your eyes and it was all said and done, how would it feel? And they explain it and they describe it to me, and I get like this quality from that, right? So if you are looking around at your competition, you're probably gonna start feeling kind of like shitty, right? And like comparing yourself and imposter syndrome and all this stuff. So then you're not going forward, right? You're probably gonna fall down, and you're gonna be like my brother, right? Like empathy fall, or like me, just like losing focus and like, you know, I shouldn't have been listening to that instructor. I should have just been going straight. So it works in your career and it works in every single project. It's a macro micro lesson. Where you look is where you go.
What a great place to leave it. It reminds me of something I read recently, like clear on your destination, but your happiness is not dependent on that destination becoming true, right? Same thing you're saying. I love it. Round of applause for our panelists. I have hidden all of their contact information behind their heads, but I'll get it to you. I want to tell you a little bit about what's coming up next for Creative Pulse. But before we do, we end all of our events the same way, which is a question to you. I want to know how you're going to take action. I wonder if, Chris, you could help out with the mic here. You come to these events, and one of the differences between like watching something on YouTube while you're eating breakfast, you know, before you even get dressed, and actually like showing up here, paying attention, taking notes, like, is that you can actually implement this in your life, right? And the cool thing about a panel, like I said, it's only the second one we've organized in Creative Pulse, is because it's like organizing 3 events. You've just taken in 3 really, really senior level people's, you know, operating system. So I would love 2 volunteers just to share, like, how do you think you'll be able to take one nugget, big or small, and actually apply it in your life? Yeah? Phil?
Hi, my name is Phil. Excuse me, I had a Coke. Okay. So the thing I'm going to, what I picked up, I can't remember who it was from, research your client, research what they want, research what they do as much research as you can, and then put your pitch together. So normally when I go with a client, either they come to me, or if I'm searching for them, it's just by referral. But to target a certain client, or to look for a certain client, I think it takes a lot of work to do it, and to not just go for the money, but actually service them, and you'll get something out of it. So I'm kind of thinking, do my research on the client, what they've done in the past, what I think they would like in the future, and put something together, and then pitch. So that's my deal.
Cool. That's like a blend of 2 things, right? It's a bit of a like understanding the why that you would actually chase somebody, and also combining it with an intense research. Very cool. One more example I'd love right over here.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Soumya, and I'm a graphic designer. I happened to attend Pamela's talk a couple of weeks ago at Ladies Wine and Design. For me, to answer your question, how these events help me, I'm a creative who moved from India, had to restart my design journey all over again in Vancouver, and currently I have a remote job. So these kind of events give me access to what a future career could look like, give me access to expertise, and also open doors for someone who's an immigrant and a woman of color to meet people beyond my usual circles and learn from you guys. So yeah, that's about it.
I love that, and thank you for coming here. You're so welcome. What is one thing, a nugget from one of our panelists that you could apply in your situation?
Actually, I'll tell you two actually. One of them was what's in the way is the way. That's something that Pamela discussed last time too, and I've not forgotten it. And the last one, the way you ended, Margherita, was because I'm taking driving lessons. I'm learning how to drive. And that's how, that really resonated with me. Where you look, you go. And sometimes it's very easy to lose the path because we're looking at multiple things, how to survive, how to keep our passions alive. And that was a very powerful way to end the session. So thank you for that.
Beautiful. Round of applause for the people who shared.